Good morning. I am reporting to you live from, well, not live when you listen to this, but I'm recording this from Santa Marta, Colombia, in the Department of Magdalena. We are just a few hours away from the Venezuelan border, and early this morning, U.S. forces went into Caracas, Venezuela, the capital, captured Nicolás Maduro, the president, and his wife, and have taken them to the United States. Now, Nicolás Maduro is a bad guy. He has oppressed the Venezuelan people, especially the opposition. They have done away with free and fair elections. And in fact, the elections that they had, he lost. He's very unpopular with his own people, but basically, tried to turn, or did successfully, along with his predecessor, Hugo Chavez, turn Venezuela into a dictatorship, a left-wing socialist dictatorship. Now, when I first came down here, I'm on the Rodadero Beach in Santa Marta, which is a popular tourist destination. And I thought that I would go and talk to some Venezuelans because a lot of the people working here are Venezuelan. So the first two people that I approached were reluctant to be seen on camera. Now, I had a pretty good conversation with the last guy, who is very supportive of the actions that the U.S. took in his country, but still feels too afraid to be seen on camera. I woke up this morning and friends and followers were sending me all these messages, and I'm sitting here and I'm like, what the hell's going on? My phone's blowing up, but I'm trying to get some rest. We came up here with the family for New Year's, and it's interesting because overwhelmingly the reaction has been positive. People are glad that Maduro has been taken out. It kind of reminds me of back in the 90s, my first time going to Panama. And I was a little bit apprehensive because it was not too long after the U.S. went into Panama and took out Manuel Noriega, and I was kind of like, are they going to be mad at us? And according to like a lot of the U.S. press at the time, watching CNN and things like that, I was like, oh, they're really going to be pissed off in Panama and they're not going to like Americans and things like that. But I was surprised because actually when I got there, the attitude, and I talked to business people, and I also talked to taxi drivers and just regular people like at the gas station and things like that. And almost universally it was, we're glad you came and got this guy out of here, but did you have to make such a mess doing it? So I never encountered any Panamanian who was upset that the U.S. took Noriega out. And at the time, I was actually surprised. I just didn't know as much about Latin America and the history and things like that as I do now. Not that I pretend to be any kind of expert or sabelo todo, like my somebody used to work for me used to always say. That means know-it-all. But so far, the anecdotal reactions that I'm getting from Venezuelans, from Colombians, are positive. My wife, who is not political at all, I mean, she votes in elections and things like that, but she's not somebody you could say she's on the right or she's on the left and really could not care. That's not the right word. It's not that she doesn't care, but she's not a political junkie. She's not a news junkie. I woke her up and I was like, the U.S. took out Nicolás Maduro. And she said, "Qué buena noticia, what good news," and rolled back over to go to sleep. But so far, and we're going to dive into this, that seems to be the similar reaction. Maduro certainly does not have any kind of popular support, either here outside of Venezuela or in Venezuela. But I think that the interactions that I have that I could not film because the people were too afraid to be on camera because of the repressive situation in Venezuela. If they have to go back, or if Venezuelan security forces, it would be pretty easy for, I'm sure that there are Venezuelan like security undercover, kind of like whatever their version of the CIA is here where we are, because we're in a Colombian coastal city, just a few hours from the border crossing with Venezuela. But anyway, Trump has gone in there, and if we try to unpack what this means for Venezuela, for Colombia, for Latin America, it's interesting because we already have seen several petroleum tankers out there in the ocean that have stopped or turned around or gone in other destinations because they know that they're not going to be able to load up in Venezuela. Now, the petroleum transport, a lot of people don't realize that between Venezuela and the outside world goes two ways, because the Venezuelan oil is too thick. It's kind of like asphalt or tar, and they can't just pump it out like a liquid and fill up a tanker and ship it out. They have to bring in materials like naphtha and other lighter hydrocarbons to mix it to get it viscous enough, or to get it, to reduce the viscosity, or to basically go from a heavy viscous fluid like tar to something that can be pumped through pipes and things like that and loaded onto a tanker. And so it's a complex situation. I think that the people who say, this move is for oil, they're mistaken, because one, Chevron is already in Venezuela and has been operating in Venezuela constantly. That's not like, I'm not saying that's good or bad or anything like that. It's just true. The other thing is that if you want Venezuelan oil, just remove the sanctions and just buy it. Okay, that's inexpensive to do. I think this is bigger than that. And it's true that the Chavez-Maduro regime has really destroyed and silenced the popular will in Venezuela. The people there have been unable to select their political leadership. That's why we just saw Maria Machado, the person, they got the Nobel Peace Prize, and that shows that this has been recognized throughout the world. It's been recognized globally. And it's a real thing. Chavez not only did he destroy democracy in Venezuela, but he destroyed the institutions that underpin democracy, when you talk about the courts, the Congress, and these types of things. And then Maduro, who just is somewhere in the US now, took it to a whole new level of thuggery. They literally, I remember when his thugs went and were literally beating up the Congress people. So, is it a positive? Is it a negative? This kind of thing like that. There are winners and there are losers. I do believe, and from what I know and from the interactions that I have with Venezuelan people, both friends, with Colombians here in Colombia, but also people from different levels of social strata. This is not a rich versus poor thing. It's not like, the Venezuelan or rich people want one thing and the poor people want something else. It's not like that. I'm here and I'm talking to people who are basically working in the informal economy. The last two people I talked to are the guys who hold up signs and they're saying, we'll take you on a tour, we'll take you on a cruise or something like that. And these are people who are living hand to mouth, pretty much on the streets. They're refugees, and they're here in Colombia, and they're in places like Chile and the United States and the Bahamas and Trinidad and Tobago. because they're refugees, because they literally were starving in their own country. Yes, the rich people left too because their businesses got confiscated by the government and that kind of thing. It's interesting because currently here, the president of Colombia, the current president, whose term ends this coming summer, has been a friend of Nicolás Maduro, even though the Venezuelan government has been hostile to Colombian sovereignty, supporting groups like the ELN, supporting these mafia groups in places like Cucuta on the border and things like that. But the current president, and he's kind of learned to keep his mouth shut because he was belligerent towards the U.S. and then the U.S. clamped down on him. Aside from him and maybe his pura sangre, his pure blood hardcore supporters, Colombians seem to be, unanimous is not the right word, but overwhelmingly in support of removing Maduro. The Venezuelans that I have interacted with so far, and later today I'm going to try to find a plurality of Venezuelan opinions if I can. But again, if you're a supporter of Maduro, you're going to be in Venezuela, right? If you are if you're not happy, either because you're politically active or because you're starving, you're going to be outside of Venezuela. Places like here, where people are working on the street. I mean, literally, like the people who at the stoplights wash your windows on your car, a lot of them are from Venezuela. The people who are trying to work at the very bottom of the informal economy, it's really pretty sad in a lot of cases, are Venezuelan refugees. But anyway, who wins and who loses, aside from the losers are the current political regime in Venezuela, the generals, the cartel de soles, like they say, which means the sun's cartels. Venezuelan flag has 7 stars on it, and the soles, they say, they call those the suns. And this cartel of Venezuela has more generals per capita in its military than any other country. And the reason is, like, you get to be a general not because you know anything about military strategy or such, but because you're part of this mafia that runs the country. It's interesting. In the U.S., if you want to be a general or an admiral, you pretty much have the equivalent. You're pretty much a doctor. You pretty much have the equivalent of a PhD. It's quite an accomplishment to be a general in like an advanced modern military, but there it's not based on that. It's based on, okay, you're a capo, you're part of our club, you're a don, you have shared in our crimes. If we go down, you're going down with us too. And that's how you get to be a top officer or a general. Now, the downside of that is when shit goes down, when there's military action and things like that, you're not qualified to be a general and to take action. You don't know anything about urban warfare or defending territory or the things that typically generals know about. You're just part of a corrupt mafia ring, and so it's going to be pretty easy to topple you. Now, the problem is going to be that these people must cling to power, because if they go down and they realize this, they will either be in jail, in some U.S. jail somewhere, or even worse, a Caracas prison. And I say worse because the sanitary conditions and the psychological conditions in prisons down here are no joke. If you've ever seen that old show, Locked Up Abroad or something like that, try to find one where they show you what it's like in a Latin American prison. And it's really scary. Or they'll end up hanging from a tree somewhere or something like that. Because again, it's not like these people have power from popular support. But let's go around and look at the winners and the losers. So Colombia as a country wins because a strong, prosperous Venezuela is very beneficial for Colombia. Now, the current president loses because he's a friend of Maduro. He admires Maduro. He kind of envies Maduro and wishes he had that kind of power to do whatever he wants in his own country. But already this morning, Colombians are messaging me, rich Colombians, poor Colombians, people I know socially, people outside of my milieu, because you might say, oh, Lauren, you're an international, foreigner. You probably just know people in the, whatever, the high society, which, if you really know the reality, is very much not the case. But still, I have yet to see anywhere support, real support, and there's AstroTurf support, and there's the bodegas like they call them, there's the bot farms and things like that. And there's also going to be the hardcore leftist supporters of people like Nicolás Maduro, but even, and Gustavo Petro, but even the kind of everyday people who might be on the left. I have people who in the United States are on the left who are very happy to see Maduro go, because they are people who are very much into human rights and into social justice and things like that. And Maduro has been an enemy of these concepts. He's not a friend of social justice. He's not a friend of pluralism. He's not a friend of democracy or self-determination or things like that. And so even a lot of my friends on the left have been very much pleased to see that he's gone. So that's the first piece of news here. I'm not going to go on and on because we'll end up with too many videos or too long of a video. So I'm going to make several short different ones. The next one, stay tuned. We're going to talk about what this means internationally for Venezuela, for Colombia, and the region. So thanks a lot. And we will try to keep you updated as events evolve and we are able to receive and digest information.